Hello, I'm Chris Fenton with Loyal Homes, and this is your weekly update. I want to start these updates out by looking at the British Columbia real estate market every week and just kind of taking a quick look at what's going on. I think the key attribute right now in BC is that the number of active listings on the market in virtually every market is at a 5-year high. So basically, after the pre-COVID craziness, we're at a high point in number of listings on the market. The exception to that is Northern BC and Thompson Okanagan. So they're still pretty high, but they're not at an all-time high. Meanwhile, the number of sales is trending downward in all markets as the year starts. Since January, we're actually seeing sales decrease, which is interesting and a little unusual in a spring market. It's like the spring market hasn't quite hit yet. I don't know if it's because of what's going on in the Middle East. I suspect that probably has a big part to play in it. I've been selling real estate and helping real estate advisors, train real estate advisors for 20 years. And it's definitely true that weather can affect the onset of a real estate market, but these global events can also cause a little skittishness, usually for short periods of time in the market. People are more likely to transact when they're feeling overall comfortable. We've seen wars before, we've seen pandemics, and we know that they have short effects on markets. But I think that might be what's happening as the year starts. Well, what does it mean when listings are at a 5-year high and sales are trending down? It means that there are more listings on the market than there are buyers. It means that if you're selling a house and you're in a position that you want to move, you really have to be aggressive with your pricing and aggressive with your marketing. It's more than ever you need to stand out and tell the story of what makes your property. And part of that story, of course, is pricing. Buyers are going to be looking at all the options on the market, and they're going to be picking the one that looks the best. So you need to attract their attention, and then they need to feel assured that this is a reasonable buy in the market. On the buying side, what does it mean? It means it's hard to shift through the options on the market. There's more options than there have been in the past. Some of them have been sitting on the market a long time, and there's overpriced listings that are sitting on the market and not selling. New listings are coming up and getting snapped up. I saw last week I had one agent write 3 offers on 3 different properties, and all 3 of them went into multiple offer scenarios. So even though we're in this market, a really good listing is going to get some activity. So that's what's going on province-wide, and it's interesting because the province does act relatively similarly as a market. If you look at graphs of the different regions, they tend to go up and down relatively in sync. The next thing I want to do is I want to just kind of hone in, and we'll hone in every week on one community. This week I'd like to do Oceanside on Vancouver Island. I'd like to look, which is Parksville and Qualicum, take a quick look at what's going on there, specifically at the single family market. There's currently 3.8 months of inventory on the market. So what does months of inventory on the market means? It means at the current pace that we're selling houses, it would take 3.8 months to sell everything that's currently on the market. So it's a measure of whether where we are in that buyers versus sellers market. That's an interesting stat because the high point last year was 5.6 months on the market. So we have less to sell right now in relation to the number of sales going on than we did in September of last year. That's an interesting thing to have in the spring. Usually in the spring, we will see a ballooning of inventory on the market. We're not seeing that as much this year. And as I said, those well-priced houses, we're seeing them sell. It also means the Oceanside market is doing better than some of the other markets on Vancouver Island, better than some of the other markets in British Columbia. So that's sort of the market update part of this update. I'm going to give you a little bit of an update into what's going on with us. This week it was a listing that I was representing the seller in, that we went through a building inspection and we had some things come up. For confidentiality reasons, we won't get into addresses or anything like that, but we had a house on the market. We brought in our social media coordinator. He shot some pretty cool video of the house. We did some social media ads that we ran on Instagram and Facebook. Professional photographer came in. Our marketing team went hard at work drafting the story to tell the story of that house. They always want to tell the story in a way that highlights what makes that property unique to the target market we think will be interested in that property, and then to order the photos in a way that tells the story. There's a lot of thought that goes in with our Loyal Homes marketing team on presenting a listing to the market. So we present the listing to the market, and in this particular market, about 40% of houses are selling. So it means if there's 2 houses on the market, one's not going to sell and the other one has an 80% chance of selling. So it's a challenging market to sell in. We put it on the market and we receive an offer in short order within a week, which is really cool. We negotiate back and forth. We represent the seller, of course, so our job in that negotiation is to help the seller get the most money possible in that negotiation. And it certainly helps when you've done a great job with marketing and your team's done a great job with marketing and you get that early interest. When you get that early interest and you get an early offer, your bargaining position is much stronger. So we leverage that position to get a great accepted offer price that we're very happy with. Now, the next step is the buyer goes through their due diligence, which is important. So they're working through their financing and their inspections and insurance, et cetera. So the inspection comes back and shows that there is an issue with this particular house in the perimeter drains around the house and in some of the foundation work. So the buyer decides, it's a first-time home buyer, and the buyer decides that they don't want to proceed at the price they originally negotiated. So what they want to do is they ask for a renegotiation. So the agent comes to me and asks me to hash this out verbally. And as a professional real estate advisor, the first thing I do is I say, look, we need to put this in writing. It holds a lot more weight. If you're going to ask somebody to reduce a sale price, it should be signed with a signature, meaning that it's a legally binding negotiation. So we do that. And now I have to sit down with my clients and explain this, right? Because this is unfortunate news. It's not news anybody wants to hear after building inspection. And what I tell my clients in these situations is that it's not uncommon for someone to come back and renegotiate on a building inspection. And I'm a firm believer that that shouldn't happen. And the seller should stand firm except for one specific scenario. And that is when something significant is wrong with the house that you're previously unaware of. Because if you look at it this way, if you have a perimeter drain issue and you didn't know there was an issue, it's a real problem. It's a significant problem that has a significant cost. And if that buyer walks away from this sale, the seller is left with this issue and is going to have to address this issue or sell the property disclosing this issue, which is going to result in a discounted sale price. So it makes sense in those scenarios to negotiate some sort of reduced sale price. The question is, where is that sale price? What's a fair thing for that sale price? And in our case, representing the seller, what's in our seller's best interest? So what I always believe is that when there's an issue, so let's take perimeter drains, there's an issue, the seller should not be paying the entire cost of new perimeter drains, because if that house was put on the market with brand new perimeter drains, it would fetch more money. A house with new perimeter drains is worth more money than a house that has 50-year-old perimeter drains. So the natural thing to do is to meet somewhere in the middle. And in this case, both parties should get quotes. I advise my clients to slow down, go get some quotes, have your own people look at it, really understand what's going on, and come back to the table. And they ultimately, the sellers, decide what they're wanting to do and what they're willing to do, and the buyers do the same. And it resulted in a good ending. The house is now sold. It's sold at a fair price to both parties. The buyer's getting a new to them house with known issues that they are paying a reasonable price for, that they're excited about, and the seller has sold their house in a difficult market at a reasonable price. So that's an update in sort of what a day is like for us from time to time. So next I want to talk about tip of the week. And my tip of the week is going to be in the vein of in this market, how does a buyer spot a good deal? How do you spot a good deal in today's market? So it's a really good question because, as we said, there's lots of inventory on the market. There's houses that have been on the sale for sale for a long time, and there's brand new listings. How do you know what's a good deal? Well, it really comes down to education. What you want to do is you want to get a real estate advisor that really knows the market, that's working in that market on a daily basis. It's a full-time professional, 40 to 60 hour a week real estate advisor, and go out with them and tour properties and do what we call market research. Get to know the trade-offs between this area and this area, between this square footage with this high-end finishing and this square footage with this low-end finishing. Houses that have all the expensive stuff done, the roof and the heat pump and the windows, as opposed to houses that need some of those updates still. There's trade-offs here, and the only way to know a good deal when you see it is to be aware of what those trade-offs look like, and that just takes time. So you definitely want to rely on your real estate advisor. You need to be able to trust your real estate advisor, have a good relationship that has trust so that they can give you advice, but you also want to be educated so that you're approaching this from a place of confidence. So I'm going to end it with one last section, the update, and that is just a local spotlight. Anyone that knows me knows that I love hiking. My family and I, we go on 2 to 3 multi-day backpacking trips locally on the island, locally in BC, And also we get on planes. We just got back from Portugal's Fisherman's Trail. So we love hiking. It's what we do. And we love spring because spring means hiking seasons here. So I wanted to highlight some pretty cool hikes, pretty cool things to see. And I'm thinking it's April, spring is just starting. What's the best hikes for April? Well, I think it's waterfalls, right? In April, the water starts to flow at an all-time high. The snow's melting. So here are some waterfalls across Vancouver Island to check out. The first one is Little Niagara Falls in Goldstream Provincial Park. Then there's some really well-known ones. There's Ammonite Falls in Nanaimo. A little bit of a challenging trail to get there, but certainly doable. Englishman River Falls in Parksville. Little Qualicum Falls is a really famous one, kind of by Cameron Lake. And then there's a couple lesser known waterfalls. One would be Rosewell Creek Falls in Fanny Bay. And then one of my favorites is Weiner Falls in Port Alberni. Weiner Falls is pretty spectacular. It's a smaller waterfall. It's way less known. It's out in the Sprout Lake area, but it's worth checking out. And then we'll cap it off with another well-known one, which is Elk Falls in Camel River. So go get out there, get your hiking boots on, and enjoy the weather that we're having. We'll see you next week for next week's update.